Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realms continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association conference here in Cloudcroft, New Mexico. We have the great joy of being joined by Cindy Miller from IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely,
Always.
same here. It's always a pleasure to come out to the IRVA conferences. It is probably hands down my favorite community that I work with this show, because it really is a community of not only mutual support, but a community of mutual, everybody put the best foot forward for research community out there. It's one of the things I bring up to people all the time. If you're looking into parapsychological, UFO, UAP, anything like that, there are probably more letters and commas behind people's names in the remote viewing community than any of those others, because it actively started in a lab and with data and with quantifiable data. So it's interesting to see that coming up on 50 years now, that it is still that way, and that is the main protocol, is data, data, data. And it's beautiful and amazing. What brought you to the field of remote viewing to begin with, Cindy?
It was, a little bit of interest in, lucid dreams, astral protection, and then a little bit more into Paul's kind of remote viewing.
Okay.
And took some courses from Pam Coronado, and then they encouraged me to, get on the IRVA board when Pam was president. And so it's been a path like that.
How did you come to hear about remote viewing or anything like that to begin with?
When it came out years ago, right? When it hit the news, of course, there was that.
Yeah. I mean, I basically heard it for the first time on Coast to Coast whenever they used to come on, and they always had the SRI commercial in the middle, like, send in for your free videotape, shipping only. And somewhere in my garage, I still have the videotape. I'm trying to find it, but it was fascinating to hear about those things, and the fact that our government had used this and funded it and looked into it.
That made it a lot easier, coming from a scientific background, to accept it, knowing that there was this program
there was actual funded interest.
Yes, and that happened with my spouse too, and validating it.
Well, let's start getting into that, especially with the scientific background, things like that, because there are a lot of protocols when it comes to, especially controlled remote viewing specifically. There are a lot of, I would say, very laboratory style protocols that you go through with that. Amongst the different styles of remote viewing, how do you see data coming in? How do you see those data sets coming in? And do those data sets, are they congruent with each other, or do they separate and diverge when given the same target? Things like that.
So in terms of data, since my focus is pretty much AI analysis of data, the format of it doesn't matter quite so much.
Okay.
It depends on how you're looking at it. If you're teaching, students, and you want a type of emphasis on a particular type of remote viewing for some, objective, it's going to make a difference, right? It's going to make a difference in how you communicate. But when you're doing computing and developing AI platforms, the format doesn't matter quite as much. You need to program in what they mean and understand the doctrine behind it. Yeah. Right? With CRV, you need to understand, you probably want to ignore, certain aspects of it that you put in the top right corner where you're writing your name, you're writing the target number, you're writing, things that won't be relevant to analyzing the remote viewing session for what would be actionable intelligence from it, if that's what you're interested, operational remote viewing. But if it was the HRVG, the Hawaiian Guild, that you need to understand what's going on in order to be able to do any kind of AI analysis on those sessions. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand about AI. I think most people are just familiar with ChatGPT models, things like that. With ask a question, it gives you an answer. But when you're looking at actual large language models, like we were saying on my phone call the other night, I have created an offline server that I am training in different paranormal research avenues, things like that. And when you're doing that, you literally have to train that thing like a child.
Yes, you
And
do.
it's one of those much like if somebody goes, "Hey, what's that thing going down that road with those wings?" Well, that's an airplane. Okay. Well, who's that in the front? That's a pilot. Well, what's he do? Like, there's going to be a series of questions that come after that you have to preemptively think about, that you have to give it a data set for. Like, this is what a pilot is. Pilots also do this. Also, the name a pilot is also the name of somebody that captains a ship larger than this on the sea. That kind of stuff. So you really do have to ground up the knowledge base that you are feeding a data set to for it to analyze.
Right. You have to be, as a researcher, you have to be very competent in your field when you're trying to do discovery learning using a chatbot.
Yeah.
Because it is so easy for it to go off.
Absolutely.
And you're like, wow, that's new. That's a new discovery. Or wow, my remote viewing target, it was like 90%. Probably not.
Maybe not
if that's happening consistency.
Well, especially if it's the fact of that LLM is online and able to pull data from other places.
Oh, right.
And because at that point is even a regular one offline without the proper data sets and things like that will hallucinate, and based on the questions that you've been asking, give you an approximate answer of what it thinks you're looking for.
This is correct. Yes, definitely. But the way that you're doing it, trying to really, understand the data behind your LLM, really build that data, build the responses. I mean, that's just a completely different response system. So it'll have your biases, it'll have whatever biases you do, but how
or
you
whatever
document
biases
that.
are in the data that I've given
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how it handles that will it's just things you'll have to adjust to get the right outcome constantly.
Well, and I think a lot of people are really reticent when it comes to AI. I use AI art, all kinds of things. I use AI software for helping get rid of noise in the background of recordings, all kinds of things. So
that makes sense. The fear, Pam Coronado and I have taught a couple of courses on that. One for practical use of AI. And then we just started seeing a whole lot of social media posts because there are, leaders or people who have followings in the remote viewing field that are sort of, encouraging the fear of AI, right? And we felt like that really needs to be addressed. Because as working with LLMs, large language models, that, it's just, at this point, it's just a tool, right?
That's right.
And it's not to be feared the way that it's currently designed. Now, I would worry when they start, inputting biological kind of interfaces and things.
Sure.
But we're not there when we're talking about ChatGPT.
Well, and even the idea of, like you got into yesterday, the idea that it's not going to compete with humanity in that kind of way because we are made differently.
That's true. We have access to this data field that makes remote viewing possible.
Yeah.
Right. So there are so many uniquenesses. And was it Lori today was talking about the interface between the importance of the human body in being that interface between the consciousness and subconsciousness.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if it was her talk, but it's really that with, your AI doesn't have that.
No,
right?
It doesn't. It doesn't have subconscious. It only has data field fed into it and question.
Yeah, it's got hardware for the body and it's got the conscious part. It does not have this subconscious part.
Nor a connection to non-local consciousness.
Right, exactly.
In that kind of way, because even though it's connected to the internet and things, we are like walking transducers. We are constantly emitting and receiving with our brain, whether we realize it or not.
True.
And taking in data. And yes, sometimes that data is quantum data. It may be data just, like the example I give all the time is the old Time Life commercial. A woman in Maine was on a bus and she had a thought about her sister. little did she know her sister was in a car accident in Poughkeepsie. You know, like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
things like that. But that doesn't happen with
Mm-mm.
computers. That didn't happen. Even though we're quantum entangling particles with
Right.
computers, and even though we are looking at literally the first silicon quantum processor
Mm-hmm.
that they just did, like all of a few weeks ago, announced like we now have a silicon quantum capability
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of way, which is going to be amazing for computing, all kinds of things, coding, and even AI,
Yeah.
and
Right.
where we're going with that.
Right.
But is it going to get to a point where it's as conscious as we are? I don't think it's ever going to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. Like you would have
It'll
to
take
get,
some leaps.
well,
right
you'd have to
now.
get into the point of like Asimov and creating a positronic brain, man.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way you might
And
get
then that may
close.
be possible.
And then maybe like, you know,
Mhm.
few more 100 years, something like that. But I
Mhm.
don't think that the phrase I use all the time is if you think ChatGPT or other AIs are going to take over the world, you can either look at this as the most assuring phrase or the most frightening. It will be as smart as the average person reading the internet.
You're right. No, I think they are getting more into PhD level.
Oh no,
yeah,
they're
they are.
definitely getting better at culling the data, at
Mhm.
telling those things apart. But even the PhD level ones still have the hallucination that
Right.
happens here and there. Still have the want of pleasing the user, asking the Turing test style question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's just it. It really is that Turing test idea of
Mhm.
behind a black wall. If you're just typing a question and it's answering you, would you believe it's human?
Oh, right. And that's just that. I think the Turing test we need a different one, right?
Oh, no. We need a
can you
modernized.
actually, right? Can
We
you
need a
access
modernized.
that non-local field?
Yeah.
You know, is our Turing test now, our modern Turing test.
Well, and even with that though, let's get back into the
Mhm.
laboratory science of remote viewing and how we can quantifiably show that connection to the
Mhm.
quantum in that kind of way. Because I'm sure that's of course what most viewers and most doubters of remote viewing out there right now are saying is like, how can you even prove the connection and the entanglement between things?
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And between you and a target, you know, or even between you and your monitor if it's not a double blind target. You know, the fact that like the data you may be receiving maybe actually be from your monitor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, things like that. So how do you get to a point of data field and laboratory wise being able to quantify
Oh,
that?
right, right. Well, it's going to take, I think empowering AI research is going to be critical into widening the accessibility of remote viewing research and the validation of remote viewing research. I mean, back in the SRA days, they just didn't have these tools,
Yeah.
right? So competition between different efforts is really key right now in developing platforms, developing ideas, exploring with it, because it just allows you to do so many more things without having to have a stable of remote viewers to grade session, a stable of remote viewers to, agree upon what the scoring data is.
Yeah.
Those are very time-consuming
Absolutely.
tasks filled with human biases.
Yeah.
That are hard to quantify and hard to adjudicate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And you know, even the idea of once again, and this is something that you addressed on the cruise last year when you first spoke
Mhm.
about AI
Mhm.
and remote viewing, was the idea of no, it's not like the AI is a viewer in your group. It's not like you're asking the AI to remote view for you.
Right.
You're using the AI as your moderator, as basically your monitor. The idea of, okay, so here's what I have. And even in your presentation last year,
Mhm.
and this is the example of, once again, training that large language model
Right.
for the data set that you want it to look at. You had given clues about, you know, I see circles, I see
Right.
red, I see motion, you know, and it's going fast. I see a street. And it was like, oh, it sounds like you're talking about a car. It's like, please don't prompt me as to what you think
Right.
the object is
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
what you think the target is.
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, you know. But
That's-
to let it know that like, no, now you're giving me what I would consider an AOL. You're putting a noun to it
Right.
You know.
Right. And that's one of my goals this year is to develop a real AI monitor. It's part of what Dale Graff, Deborah Katz, and Jennifer Prather, since we've talked last, were funded by Bial to do research on this AI and intersection between technology and remote viewing and dream actually research. So we actually are. So what I plan to do, that we had the research lab in the last 3 days. So that was a ton of fun to do that. And we did the human parts that you need to do in person. And part of that was human monitoring. And then I need to finish building the AI monitor that doesn't do things like we just talked about, does not all of a sudden go to a noun, right? That truly tries to monitor more like you would do as a human. And not evolve with you and start to preload and not have those, as at least reduce the number of corrections that you have to give.
Corrections and biases.
Oh yeah, biases.
Corrections
definitely.
and biases.
And it's interesting because when there's all sorts of data that you can get from AI monitoring. I don't know how far we'll get, but imagine if you could hold your phone up and it's looking at you while you're doing things. That would be awesome. Don't know if I'm going to get there in this iteration of the research project. But the potential is amazing.
Well, and especially, if you could get to a point where it can real time watch you, and same way the way I described it as my monitor, where it's like she's watched my show for a long time. Before she became my monitor. So it's one of those, she knows when, like, no, you had something cross across your mind a while ago that you didn't verbalize. I saw it in your face. Because like she's seen me like as a guest is talking and I have an idea to think about, like, oh, there's a question. Things like that. And that kind of intimacy, would be really hard to train.
It would be
to get to a point of even that might bring in some facial recognition technology where you can put on a camera and it can recognize facial tics and be like, it seems like you're thinking about something. What's on your mind?
Right.
That kind of stuff.
And I know that sounds creepy.
No, to an extent.
but think about it. It's happening now in the commercial world.
Absolutely.
And in the
it's
research
happening
world.
Every time you turn on Facebook.
Yeah. Or go visit a foreign country and, it's looking at, right.
No, I mean, the traffic cameras, it's all over the place.
So,
But the idea, and especially, and that comes down to another point, especially when it comes to AI, but any data, especially when you're talking about personal things, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of remote viewing comes down to crimes and crime solving, and tracking criminals and cases that are still closed and stuff like that. So you really do have to consider the privacy implications of any AI that you're working with, period. And that was something that I told an agency that I was working with, helping them possibly build a website, things like that. And they were wanting to basically start using AI to recreate people's stories, like take a picture of them and have it like tell their story. And I'm like, you can't do that. You would have to get explicit permission from every single person to use their likeness and voice to create this.
Correct.
That's a big data concern. Like, even until my son was 8, you met my son at Sci Games.
I did.
Until he got his YouTube channel, he was called T-Man online. I never mentioned his name because it was bad enough that I was revoking his consent to put his biometric data into the machine by posting a picture for my family to see.
Right.
And having to have that conversation at Christmas with them of like, please do not use his name when you respond to a picture. Like, oh, he looks great.
Right.
Oh, that's my grandson. He's so beautiful. But please don't tie his name to his biometric data.
Sure, absolutely.
I've already revoked his consent enough.
Right.
And that was even something I used to have a conversation about years ago with a former Secret Service agent, was at what point will we start seeing emancipation cases because parents gave away their kids' biometric
Oh,
data?
wow. Yeah. Oh, gosh. I know. I can see why
So,
people are frightened.
yeah,
I
the
absolutely
privacy
do.
concerns are there and they're real.
Yeah.
But if you put those things, if it's not going out to the public in any kind of way,
Right.
if it's not in any kind of publicly accessible database, at least like the video of your face, where that data gets deprecated, but the data, like the video of you, gets deprecated, but the session number and the facial recognition data stays.
Right.
That's a beautiful use case and can really pass forward. And at that point, you can really start metricing things like, does this kind of facial tick mean the same thing for each person? You can even get, because one of the experiments I'm trying to do right now is a perception experiment. And the idea of watching somebody's face and recording their hand motion with things from their memory. So kind of the idea of, how does your mind perceive a circle? So without seeing a circle, draw me a circle. Do you start at the top? Do you start at the bottom? Do you go clockwise or counterclockwise? Is it a better circle or is it more of an oval? Things like that. And how that relates to how we perceive the world around us, or how we even take in and store data in our brain.
Right.
Because all those things metrically make a difference. And if there can be found a commonality inside of there, then we have a whole new data set to be able to explore, and maybe even a whole new branch of viewing to explore.
Maybe. Yeah. There's so much potential with AI. And like I say, the privacy is absolutely the number one concern to make sure. So we make sure I use, a very secure platform, Microsoft Azure, and use all their products. So all the data is behind. So
it's behind your personal firewall and your Azure account.
Yeah. So all those tools, you got to make sure, especially in this day and age where you can just grab tools commercially off the shelf to do this analysis. Yeah. Right. So that's one concern. But, I'm excited that I'm building this platform and we're going to use it for the research. I've told you before that Pam Coronado and I are collaborating on how we use it to work with law enforcement and to help with the missing persons cases and crimes and things like that. And all of that requires, very secure data.
Absolutely.
Practices.
That's just it. You've got to have that secure data. And even using forward-looking things like blockchain and stuff like that to help secure that kind of data.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it really does bring us to a point of, where are we going to be next? Because coming up on 50 years, it's one of those, if we don't open the avenues, if we, I think the mid generation in remote viewing, just turning 50. So how do we make it accessible to kids? How do we make it accessible to the 18 to 30-year-old, that does look at the world, does interact with the world in a different way, does do a checkbox, a consent checkbox in a different way, isn't so much concerned about that because it's just been an ingrained part of their life.
Right.
Like, I remember locking my bike up, or not having to lock my bike up even.
Those days are gone.
They're way gone.
Yeah, and that's why, the first two presentations in IRVA was mine on the AI platform that I'm developing called enigmaticinsights.com. And then following me is someone I collaborate with, and we talk constantly about efforts, Chase McCarty. And he is a young software Silicon Valley engineer, has done AI startups, and but they're very different models. His site really, he's got that youthful vibe, right?
Yeah.
So it accesses and helps bring in, different age groups, right?
Yeah.
And we need that. You could look at it and say, oh, you're both building AI platforms that can be used for research, but you couldn't use his the way that he grades the targets, which is based on decoys. So which of the 10 targets there does the session best match?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that does give you fantastic data in terms of proving remote viewing works. Is we need that, but for operational remote viewing, which I'm focused on, or meeting exactly the target and doing research on that, it's different. My analysis has to be more specific to the target, to the exact target, not use decoys. And especially if you're trying to do work with law enforcement, saying, well, it was closest to this, then these decoys isn't going to cut it.
No.
To convince law enforcement.
Absolutely.
And so it kind of just depends on your use case.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that we got into with Joe Franks earlier.
Oh, right.
Joe's
great.
Well, and literally just the parallels between remote viewing and polygraph and interviewing people, and that gut instinct and intuition that you have to follow of, I think this person needs a polygraph. But even then, once the data starts coming in with the polygraph, the same concept of not only are you going to look at it and call the data, but you're going to give your data and the analysis of it to someone else to analyze, to double check and make sure that like you hit the analysis right and did you miss anything?
Right.
And that's a huge part of remote viewing, that idea of having the monitor and the idea of not only the self-check beforehand to help unsmudge your lens instead of the filter that's in front of it.
Right.
So that you can just unhinged receive data without processing it in that kind of right-brained way.
Oh, sure. That's so I mean, things seem to be moving so fast. I'm really excited about where we'll be next year.
Yeah.
When we have the Dayton conference, IRVA's 2006 conference is going to be in Dayton, Ohio, right where the military remote viewing program started. So we'd be right next to Wright-Patterson. Dale Graff is so excited. I don't know if you've
I bet he
saw
is.
him. I
he
pulled
is a
him up
kid.
during my.
He is a kid in a candy store. It was the first thing he said to me when I walked in. He's like, "You coming to Ohio next year?" I'm like, "Tell me about Ohio, man."
Oh, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I mean, and I just can't wait to see the research results that come out from all of these different efforts that are going on.
Absolutely.
So hopefully it'll have a big research focus in addition to being accessible to new people. There were so many new people at this conference.
Almost 2/3.
Isn't that
when
amazing?
the hands were raised? There were a lot.
There were a lot.
It was at least over half.
Yeah. So, we planned on it being a small conference just because of the capacity of the room. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow. Okay.
Well, and here's the thing. This is what I've told people because so many people are like, "Oh, I wasn't going on the cruise," and I was like, "Well, you really missed out."
Yeah.
Well, number one, it was an adventure with the hurricane and stuff. But aside from that, because of the smaller group and also because of the adverse circumstances, we were kind of forced to come together as a community to make something happen.
Right.
At least even in small groups of like 10, 15, stuff like that. So I think a lot of people got connected in ways that they wouldn't have been had we been at like a Grand Hyatt or a Hilton.
And that's just it. Yeah. We're going to have to think about that for Dayton because obviously we have access to their hotel rooms and that. And I was just talking to some of the planners about what we're going to do because like going on that caravan we did to Lynn's Remote View Ranch, that was very bonding.
It was.
Now, I know you
as well as getting lost in the desert.
Yeah.
That's a very...
That was but
the plus side, Pat, is findable on GPS.
Yes, that's
findable on Google Maps.
It is, and I know you had to leave a little early, but I mean, obviously the bonfire went on, and then the spoon bending, and as soon as we did the spoon bending, all of those UFOs that appeared.
Wow.
It went on for so long. And
too cool.
And you wanted to dismiss it, right? You're like, oh, that's an airplane. But we did see what airplanes were right there. So it was very clear.
Now at that point was the Skywatch ranger from the national park still here? The astronomer?
I don't think no.
No. Because that would have been cool. Just to hear her ooh and ah.
Well, so when you get, I think maybe not everybody went to that one, but there was probably 70. So when you get 70 psychics out there,
something's gonna happen.
And so I mean, people just watched. I sat next to or stood next to Dale Graff, and we were trying to like, debunk it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's crap. Wait, okay, that's, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to have to. So hopefully there were some professional videographers out there.
Nice.
So I can't wait to see those films show up.
Yeah. And, it's exciting to see remote viewing coming up on the 50 years and seeing, once again, a conference like this where the great majority of people are new to the topic, new to studying it, at least in this depth or facet. Because there's a lot of people that speak about remote viewing. There's a lot of conferences that may have somebody doing something, but to come in and learn operational means from operational teachers who are vetted, who have been in the industry and working in the industry and actively helped found the industry that is the industry of remote viewing.
Exactly.
Like these aren't just people. They're like, no, we're the people who like made this into a business that people contract us to do. And that's a different kind of conference, and it's a different kind of opportunity to learn from. It's been great to see my brother in the tech booth next to me just furiously taking notes from stuff. So
it's great. It has an authenticity that you don't often see at some conferences.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for the time during this very busy conference. It's been great to see a room full of people learning about this. So before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to find out more about IRVA and, of course, more about Enigmatic Insights. Okay, sure. Yeah, IRVA, of course, is irva.org. So that's a very easy one to remember. And then enigmaticinsights.com is my website. It's still under development, but there are still some capabilities people can go and try for free. Okay. So it's constantly in development. So, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Always a pleasure talking. We'll be talking more over the next couple days while you're online checking out everything from the International Remote Viewing Association at irva.org, as well as enigmaticinsights.com. Make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of our episodes. That is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can share the YouTube channel. It's where you can find our events page full of great coverage from events like this. Also, that's where you can find Curious Research. CuriousResearch.org is our research arm where we are actively working to bring the worlds of science and para-investigation together and help one remember that you need to have an open mind, and the other one that, don't forget, you started the science when you had the experience. So stop on by there. Stay tuned through this quick break, everybody. We will return with our continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association Conference right here in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.